Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Mid Suffolk District Council Cabinet. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please remember to use the chat function only to indicate that you wish to speak and not to post comments or questions. Please note the messages in the chat panel can be viewed by people watching the live broadcast. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I would now like to ask Claire to do the introductions. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to the Cabinet members today, we also have Councillor Keith Wellham, Councillor John Field and Councillor Roland Warboys. Also attending is our Chief Executive, Arthur Chauvonia, and our Monitoring Officer, Emily Yule. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 1, apologies for absence.
I will carry out a roll call, Chair, so that we, if you could answer to indicate your presence when I call your name, please. Councillor Gerard Brewster.
Present.
Councillor David Byrne. Councillor David Byrne, are you on mute?
Yes, I was. I beg your pardon. Present.
Thank you. Councillor Judy Flatman.
Present.
Councillor Jessica Fleming.
Present.
Councillor Peter Gould.
Present.
Councillor Susie Morley.
Present.
Councillor Harry Richardson.
Present.
And Councillor John Whitehead.
Present.
Thank you.
Item 2 on the agenda is to receive declarations of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest by members. Are there any to declare? Thank you. Item 3, MCA/19/62 is confirmation of the minutes of the meeting that we held on the 9th of June 2020. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Could I have a proposer, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm happy to propose the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. A seconder, please.
I'm happy to second the minutes. It's Peter Gould. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. The Governance Officer will now take a roll call vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If you could please answer for, against or abstain when I call your name. Councillor Brewster. Councillor, you're on mute. I believe you're still on mute, Councillor Brewster.
Are you all right now? You're okay. 4.
Sorry. Approve.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
4.
Councillor Flatman.
4.
Councillor Fleming. Councillor Fleming, are you on mute as well? Councillor Fleming?
Yes, approve. I'm sorry, I've been trying to get myself off.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councillor Gould.
4.
Councillor Morley.
4.
Councillor Richardson.
4.
And Councillor Whitehead.
4.
Thank you, Chair, that's unanimous.
Thank you. The minutes of the meeting have been confirmed and they'll be signed off at the next practicable opportunity. Item 4 is to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 5, questions by councillors?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or the Joint Audit and Standards Committee.
There were none.
Thank you very much. Item 7, the forthcoming decisions list. Do members of the Cabinet have any comments? No? Thank you very much. Item 8. So we're now moving on to MCA/19/63, and this is the General Fund Financial Outturn for 2019-2020. And I will now invite the Cabinet Member for Finance to introduce the report.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased to introduce report MCA 1963 on the General Fund Financial Outturn for 1920, which is set out in the update to our Cabinet papers. Each year we highlight the difficulty in forecasting our business rate income. We have established a business rate equalisation reserve to smooth out the effect of business rate variances. We take the annual variances on our business rates either to or from that reserve. This year, as set out in recommendation 3.2b, we will be taking 611,000 from the reserve, which still leaves a balance on that reserve of 2.35 million. Each year, whilst controlling our expenditure, additional income over and above that budgeted has produced a surplus. This year, planning fee income is 30% ahead of budget, producing a favourable variance of 395,000. Almost as large a variance comes from the SIL administration 5% top-up at 395,000. In fact, in the area of the Cabinet Member for Planning overall, we have a 734,000 favourable variance. So thanks, Councillor Byrne, as we do have some unfavourable variances in other areas. Slower than anticipated investment into SIFCO has resulted in income from that area falling 200,000 below that budgeted. Strategic properties in our own district have also cost us £98,000 more than anticipated. On the environment and housing side, we have seen adverse variances on car park income due to ticket machine problems and a hefty shortfall in net income from our solar PV panels. That's net income after expenditure from these, which is only 44% of budgeted levels for the reasons we have rehearsed many times already. Corporate resources show overall a 263,000 favourable variance, helped primarily by extra investment income. Now, the details for all these Cabinet Assistant Director areas are set out in Appendix A. The overall net effect is to produce a surplus for the year of 294,000, which we propose in recommendation 3.2b to transfer to the Growth and Efficiency Fund. We are proposing some carry forward expenditure to 2021 of 164,000, as set out in the table in paragraph 5.16. So permission for those is requested in recommendation 3.3. Now, as well as revenue, we also report on general fund capital expenditure, starting from paragraph 5.17 of the report. We had a very ambitious capital programme in 1920, and members will not be surprised to hear we didn't complete a lot of that within the calendar year. In recommendation 3.4, we are requesting the authorisation to carry forward 18.956 million. Now, just over 3% is already committed, the bulk being for the Regal Theatre regeneration, and just under 15.8 million relates to various items set out in paragraph 5.22. You'll see in that table by far the largest item is 8.452 million for SIFCO, 1,847,000 for Gateway 14, and also along with a presently completely unspent 3 million allocated for the Strategic Investment Fund. Now, so far I've made no mention of COVID-19. Its effects on the year ending 31st of March 2020 were very marginal, and its real effects will be felt in the year 2021 and indeed beyond that. Now, this administration has been criticised in the past for our high level of reserves, my financial cushion as I've liked to call them. But we go into the new uncertain COVID era with a high level of reserves, and I say thank goodness for that. Over many years, this well-administered council has built up substantial reserves, despite only levying very modest, below inflation council tax increase each year. And all our reserves are set out in detail in Appendix D. Now, a great deal of work is presently being undertaken to evaluate the ongoing effects of COVID-19 on both our income streams and expenditure. But at present, a lot of this still remains as rough guesstimations. I will be reporting on this in more detail in the first quarter report for 2021, but I do feel confident that the strength of our accumulated reserves will enable us to weather this unprecedented storm. As always, before finishing my outturn introductions, I like to pay tribute to the hard work undertaken by our finance team in closing out the books for the year and in producing such a comprehensive analysis in this report. I'd like now to move the recommendations set out in paragraph 3. Would ask for a seconder. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Who would like to second?
Chairman, I would very much like to second the report.
Thank you, Councillor Gould.
I'm pleased to second the report and its recommendation. The report tells a very positive story and one that would be envied by many councils. While the effects of COVID only started to impact on the end of 1920, we can be thankful to Councillor Whitehead and the finance team that we have such a strong outturn position from which to face the pressures and uncertainty of the current and future years. The fact that this position has been achieved while delivering low taxation on one hand and high social value on the other is remarkable. While Councillor Whitehead and the finance team are central and play a crucial enabling role, the delivery of a strong financial position while achieving key social outcomes is a testament to a strong officer team led by an able administration, which has a clear purpose and particularly an understanding about the need to invest rather than simply to spend. I'm pleased that the rental income from Cisco investments continues to make a significant contribution to the council's revenue position, and it's disappointing that we've not been able to invest to the level assumed in the budget. I hope there's no misunderstanding here and that the variance arises from doing too little rather than too much investing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gould. So now we're over to questions. Questions from members? Does anybody wish to raise their hand? No? Are any non-cabinet members wish to ask a question? No? Thank you very much. I'll now open up the item for debate.
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I believe Councillor Field and Councillor Wellham have both indicated they'd like to ask a question.
Okay, Councillor Field.
Thank you. Councillor Field, we can hear you.
Can you?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, my microphone symbol just won't whatever it is, uncross itself out.
We can confirm you're loud and clear.
Yes, thank you. I suppose a comment, if I may be allowed one at this time, is just that although the video streams are perfectly okay, there does seem to be an issue with the access to the modern.gov and to the Teams control panel, both of which are really a problem.
I agree. Yeah.
Really, I was debating whether I have a question or a statement. Obviously, the real question, I suppose, here is forgetting the sort of political grandstanding or anything that one could do. The issue I always have with this financial return, is that there are a number of variances which, you know, will happen in any business. Things happen like, dare one say, COVID-19, that you just don't expect, or you expect but don't know where within the next 100 years it's going to fall. So there are always unexpected, and you always expect variations from exact budgets, unless you fiddle the numbers, and you wouldn't want to be doing that. But there are always a number of items, to my mind, which are fairly obvious. Things like some of the adverse spend on IT, on perhaps the photovoltaic panels, things like the telephone bill, which always looks like things that had just been forgotten at budgeting time. And while there's no way I can expect you to be clairvoyant and see every eventuality, I am always concerned that we have this persistent background of quite substantial items that don't seem to hit the budget. You know, whether there are counterbalancing ones, I don't know. So the real issue is, how do we manage to get to that position? And it happens year on year, not just this year. And that's the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Field.
My microphone has come unmuted after that amount of time.
Right. Okay. Yes, as you say, we'd expect both adverse and favourable variances, and of course that's why during the year we do our estimated outturns after Q1, Q2 and Q3, because we're continuously monitoring that. And there's various things come through that only do they have effect on the current year, but they may have an effect on future years. So we're continuously using this to update our intelligence on information. I think the example you gave on PV panels is a good one, because each year we seem to sort of try and become a bit more prudent on that, and each year we're still being caught out. But hopefully at this stage now, when we got down to 44% of what we anticipated, there must come a time when these problems are sorted out. I think an adverse spend on IT, I think if we didn't have an adverse spend on IT, some people might query our accounting, because that seems to happen everywhere in the world, doesn't it? And I think again we've talked in the past about problems with the telephone bills, and I guess that's driven by the sort of technology as we brought it in. But I do feel that we should expect some adverse spend, and B, we do try and take that into account as much as we can as and when we prepare a budget. But sometimes these things have a sort of some delay, because we do our budgeting around the end of the calendar year, and then we're looking at the things like these outturns a good 6 months later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just come back again. One understands that there will be variances, but the statement really is, as we're heading into the next year with the colossal impact of COVID, we really need to make sure we're as sound as we can be, that we get adverse things as nearly right as we can, but that we don't have things that are just carelessly missed, if you like. So, because it is going to be a challenging year, as you've pointed out.
Well, I just can't argue any of the words you just said there. I quite agree.
Thank you. Councillor Wellham.
Thank you very much. The chat function isn't working on my laptop for some reason, and nor was the raising of the hand, so I had to actually physically wave. I've got two queries. One is on table 2 on page 22, where there is a transfer to reserves of 17k and a transfer of 86 from reserves in respect of the joint local plan. So I guess that overall this means that there is a higher than anticipated spend on the joint local plan. So assuming that is correct, outside of the meeting, could I be given the total cost of the work so far on the joint local plan, and what was budgeted, and how much further spend is anticipated, and some comfort that that's all been fully budgeted for, please.
Yes, I'll be pleased to give you that information outside the meeting. And I've actually got, rather naughtily, I've actually got a copy of the report printed out on paper. So I can't actually see, when you mentioned page 22, can you give me a paragraph number or appendix number?
It's table 1 and table 2. There's seems to be something odd about the page numbering, but it is on my version. It is page 22. Yeah, it's between paragraphs 515 and 516.
Oh, right. Oh, yes. Right. Let me have a look.
I mean, it's no big matter. It's just that I could not understand why there was a transfer to reserves in respect of joint local plan and a transfer from reserves in respect of joint local plan.
Well, I suspect it's actually two different items, but whether Catherine, Melissa, or Sharon, who are on the call, can just confirm that.
Is there an officer available to comment on that?
I mean, I'm happy to hear outside of the meeting if it's not absolutely clear to officers now.
Okay.
Thank you, councillors. I'm happy to jump in here. It is two separate items. So the 86,000 from reserves has been used to support costs on the local plan, and we can get you a detailed breakdown of that. And the £17,000 transfer to the reserves are two grants. One is for brownfield sites, just over 2,500, and the remaining 15,000 is actually to do with the custom build grant. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you. If I could have the other information outside of the meeting, that would be brilliant too.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you.
Yeah. My other query is in respect of the growth and efficiency fund. I see that this is on page 33, and this may be something that Councillor Brewster might want to inform me about after the meeting. I'm concerned that shopfront grants has an underspend of around 95% on shopfront grants. So it makes me wonder whether the rest of the 350k is likely to be spent. So I did mention this before, and I felt we needed to do more publicity about this. I know it's difficult over the COVID period, but you know, I just want to be sure that there isn't any apathy on the part of businesses, and that the way to, if we're going to spend this money, the way to get it spent is for there to be more publicity. I also guess that most of this would be expenditure in our towns, and particularly in Stowmarket. And I would like to see, this money spent on revitalising our shops in Stowmarket. The other thing is that if there is a problem, it doesn't bode well for the vision for Stowmarket. So I think we need to do something to encourage buy-in, whether it's buy-in by councillors, buy-in by local councils, or buy-in by the businesses. So I've got to turn that into a question. What are we doing to ensure that there is buy-in?
Well, I mean, my understanding is that this shopfront grant has now been expanded, or we said some of the criteria have been slackened, so to enable it a better uptake on it. But if Councillor Brewster wants to add to that, I'm happy to hand over to him.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I can come in, yes, indeed, the shopfront scheme, we did a really good promotional job through the team within town and within the district, which didn't get a large take-up for some reason or other. However, since the scheme has closed, we let it remain open for a time until I think it was the 31st of March, and a number of businesses did come in, and most of that money has been spent, but spent really in the current financial year. The rest of the money, the 150,000, which is for the new scheme, is what's remaining of it, and that will be spent as of 50,000 each year for the next 3 years. And that scheme will open, I understand, probably lateish summer, because we want to move away from the recovery period a little bit. It's not technically for recovery, although of course it will go that way as well. Don't know if that helps you, Councillor Wellham.
Chair, if I may, yeah, that's good news. But I think members ought to have a note of what's going on, so that we're aware that that money is being spent, and also if there's anything we can do to encourage the spending of the 50,000 that's going to be available from summer onwards. Yep,
we can arrange that, certainly. Obviously, that's for slightly different purposes, although some of it is still for frontage work. It's a much smaller grant going along. There's 3 small grants and 1 a little bit bigger. But we'll keep you in touch with that as that gets launched.
Can I just clarify? I think some of that money is to assist access into the businesses. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, it serves the same purpose basically, but it is a smaller grant.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Warboys.
Oh, thank you. It's not a question on the detail of the report, but more on the timing of the report. We're looking now at figures from the 31st of March. It's sort of 3 months or so later. Is there any reason why councillors don't get the figures at the same time as the senior leadership team, so that they have a chance to scrutinise and prepare any decisions being made as a result of those figures, especially we're in this present emergency and things are moving quite quickly?
Well, the comment I'd make, I think, is that during the year we look at the outturns at the end of each quarter, which require us to sort of forecast through to the end of the year to get our best estimates, each time of what those outturns will be. I mean, we need to close the books out from a statutory point of view by the 31st of May, which is a two-month deadline. And I think one has to understand the complications we have, where we have effectively 2 councils but 1 working together operation. So there's quite a lot of work goes on behind the scenes to split that out, and also there's the separation between revenue and capital, and separation between the general fund and the HRA. I mean, I think last year I think this report came to cabinet in June, and I'm guessing part COVID and part other things have obviously just had it slip forward to July. But if Catherine wants to make any other additional comment, I'd welcome that.
Catherine, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say as well, there is also a lead-in time for preparation of reports that come into cabinet. So the senior leadership does see the numbers first, but that's not a long lead-in time before. And then we obviously have the deadlines to go to briefing and also then for final publication. So there is probably about a good month lead-in time to getting figures prepared and the reports ready for publication. So it's not possible to turn them around immediately after the end of the year. And as Councillor Whitehead said, we have been operating in exceptional circumstances this year. The finance team have had an awful lot to do in response to the COVID-19 emergency. Councillor Whitehead also mentioned the normal deadline for publication of the accounts is the end of May, but the government has actually extended that this year to allow councils more time under the current situation, and we've taken some advantage of that. We're still aiming to publish our accounts in July, and that needs to go hand in hand with this outturn report that you're receiving today. So hopefully that just adds a little bit more to the situation.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Warboys, do you want to come back?
Yeah, yes, please. So normally you'd expect the report 4 weeks after the end of the quarter.
No, really what I was saying is there is a good month lead in time from when the numbers are ready to go through the various processes of briefings and then to the deadline for publication for Cabinet. We do normally look at a good 2-month preparation time. So usually the quarterly reports and the year-end report are actually in the 3rd month after the end of that quarter or the year end. So that is the timetable that we usually operate to.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you.
If I can ask Councillor Warboys and Field to put your hands down. Thank you. We're now moving into debate. And as the hands up function seems to be running particularly slowly, I'm just going to go through everybody in alphabetical order. And as it was at our last Cabinet meeting, there were various comments about if we do it in the same order every time, that people who may feel disenfranchised, shall we say, by being last. So I'm going to make an arbitrary decision and we're going to start in the middle of the list and continue alphabetically. So I'm going to start with Councillor Gould. Have you got anything you would like to add to the debate?
Not at this stage, Madam Chair. I was happy to make a statement in support of Councillor Whitehead's report at the start. I've got nothing to add at the moment. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Gould. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a few brief comments. First, I think it's just to echo what Councillor Whitehead said in thanking both himself and the finance team for putting together this outturn report under what must be extremely challenging circumstances. But on a sort of broader, more strategic point, I would just like to kind of reinforce the point that I think has already been mentioned, that we are in a very fortunate position to have such a strong financial reserve that we can draw down upon. I know that Councillor Whitehead referred to it as this financial cushion, but I think another way of looking at it is as a sort of rainy day fund. And I think what we're currently experiencing is something of a thunderstorm. So I think it's an enormous relief that we have that sort of fallback, so that obviously I know the picture will still become clearer over the next few months as to exactly what consequences this current crisis will have. But I think we start it in a very strong position, and I think it's important that we recognise that and that we keep monitoring this as we go forward. And that's all I wanted to say, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Whitehead, anything else you'd like to add?
Having spoken for 5 minutes at the start, I think I'll keep stum now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brewster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I won't repeat what the other things have just been said, because they really say it all and it doesn't need repeating. But what I would like to say is that a really big thank you to our finance team, not just for managing this report, but for all the work they've been doing over the COVID period, because there's tremendous pressure on them at times, and I really appreciate what they've done.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brewster. Councillor Byrne.
No, thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no comments at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Flatman.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reiterate what everybody else has said, and thank you to the finance team who have done a sterling job as always.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Fleming.
Yes, thank you. I have nothing to add. I just absolutely agree with the comments of Councillor Brewster and Councillor Richardson. Very glad we've got a reserve there to draw on, and as you rightly say, it's a rainy day, so we will inevitably draw on it.
Thank you very much. I'd also just like to add that the comments around overspend on some of our IT facilities and functionalities, without that, we would probably not be having this meeting, because our customer call centre was recently upgraded, and the consequences of that are that every one of our call centre members can take calls from home. Without that, we may have been in a lot worse situation. And the fact that almost every one of our meetings has gone ahead as scheduled, using things like Teams and all the IT facilities that we have available, supported by our county colleagues, I think is a fantastic achievement, because it's not just 550 officers and over 80 councillors across both of our districts. It's just a fantastic achievement. The whole of the Suffolk system, there's 500 people all dialing into our IT system at Endeavour House, and I think a great deal of thanks is due to our financial team and also our IT team for enabling us to work the way we do. So I'm now going to ask the Governance Officer to conduct a roll call vote. Claire, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. When I call your names, if you could respond with for, against or abstain. Councillor Brewster?
For.
Councillor Byrne?
For.
Councillor Flatman?
For.
Councillor Fleming?
For.
Councillor Gould?
For.
Councillor Morley?
For.
Councillor Richardson?
For.
Councillor Whitehead?
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. So we're now going to move on to item 9, which is MCA/19/64, and this is the Housing Revenue Account Financial Outturn for 2019/2020. And again, I'm going to ask the Cabinet Member for Finance to introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm glad it's not just me that stumbles over some of these 19, 20, 2021s, etc. Right, I'm pleased to now introduce the second outturn report of the day, which is MCA 1964, which covers the outturn for 1920 of our ring-fenced housing revenue account. This account covers the council housing stock, which is presently 3,299 homes, along with associated garages and land holdings. In the year under review, we had budgeted an in-year deficit of 419,000, as we are still working under the centrally imposed burden of the 1% per annum rent reductions over the 4-year period 1617 to 1920. So I suspect all of the members will have been as surprised as I was initially when I was first advised that we were bringing in an Hra surplus this year of 1.396 million. So I think the first question I need to answer is, what is the driver behind this turnaround? Well, we were budgeting in 1920 for 2.827 million of capital expenditure to come from our revenue budget. And that's not at all unusual, indeed it's quite normal. However, we have had slippage on our Hra capital programme. That's set out in the capital section of the report, starting at paragraphs 5.8 and with the table in 5.10 giving the numbers. Now, officers anticipated a capital programme of 12.9 million, but only just short of 4.5 million has actually been spent in the year. We do have ongoing capital commitments of just under 7.5 million to be spent in this current year, 2021. Now, these, along with other plans and aspirations for capital investment, as detailed in paragraph 513, total 8.319 million, and the recommendation 3.3 seeks Cabinet's authority for these capital carry-forward requests. Turning now to the other outturn variances, these are set out in the table in section 5.5, and the explanatory narrative is in paragraphs 5.6, sections A through to G. Now, members need to note some changes to the bold headers in sections 5.6A and sections 5.6B. Housing management should read as an adverse variance of 683,000 and not 475,000. The difference is accounted for by corporate recharges and write-offs. All the remaining narrative in this section is correct. Responsive repairs and maintenance should read as an adverse variance of 544,000 and not 553,000. That's just a minor change, and the narrative again is correct. Now, these major adverse variances against budget highlight the many operational challenges facing the HRA. But I am confident, Madam Chairman, that the HRA management recognise these challenges and that robust action plans are well underway to address these issues. Well, when we come to questions and debate, the Assistant Director for Housing as well as the Cabinet Member for Housing are here to provide further detail and assurance to members. So I think that covers all I want to say from a financial perspective. The capital programme and earmark reserves are set out in Appendix A and B. I'd like to move the 3 recommendations set out in Section 3, and I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member for Housing to second those recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Yes, I'm very happy to second the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. Do we have any questions? Oh, I'll go through a roll call, I think, as the hands up function's still a bit flaky. Do I have any questions from Councillor Brewster?
I have none, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne?
No, thank you.
Councillor Fleming?
No questions.
Councillor Gould?
No questions.
Councillor Richardson?
No questions from me, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor... Oh, we don't need to ask Councillor Whitehead, do I? So do we have any questions from any other members who are present?
No questions.
Councillor Field.
Right, assuming I'm online. It's a bit difficult because I just can't get access to modern.gov despite having fibre to the premises here and 50 megabits bandwidth. The questions I really had about those 2 major variances that John Whitehead mentioned, the 2 of the which amount to about £1 million in total turnaround. It's again 2 issues which it's quite difficult to see just why they are so large. Bearing in mind, we're supposed to have budgets that to deliver what we say we'll deliver at the cost we say we'll deliver it. So, real question is, you said you're confident that those issues are now under control. How do you really justify that confidence? Is it?
I think the main confidence is because as a cabinet we get briefings on what seems to be an increasingly regular basis, and among those briefings are various things to do with the HRA, BMBS, etc. And in all those meetings over the last few months where the housing assistant director has come in and spoke to us, indeed not only himself but also several of his staff, they've just given me that confidence level that they see where things have been going wrong in the past, see where they need changing, and as I said, I'm confident that they have robust plans in place to do this turnaround.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. I'd like to invite Gavin to elaborate on that.
Thank you, Cabinet, and thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Field, for the question. I think if I can just provide some detail, so if I could just take a few minutes of your time. I think we recognise that building services has presented its challenges over recent years. We will recall similar conversations for each of the last 3 years. I think it's important to note that if you look on year, in each of the last 3 years, the overall deficit for building services has and is reducing, and thus an improving picture. One of the challenges that we've had within building services is the backlog or the generation of outstanding job tickets, and that's been up to as many as 7,000 job tickets since dating back as far as 2017. But I'm pleased to say that since January, we've actually been successful and closed more than 6,000 of those job tickets, and now we have in real terms normal levels of work in progress. In relation to building services, some of the most significant overspend is as a result of the use of external contractors. And if I can just summarise some of the steps that have been taken or are being taken to manage that effect in order to provide Councillor Field and councillors with some reassurance. So if I take you back just to the heady days before COVID and we go back a year to April 19, you'll remember that we were talking in detail about the reduction in void times, and hence decisions were made more than a year ago to employ contractors to carry out major works and support the void times. That successfully brought void times down to a level well below target, which is now averaging about 14 to 15 days and is below the target of 21. If we then jump forward again to now, over the last 3 months, obviously we've all faced lockdown and we've all faced working from home. That building services team practically obviously can't do that for obvious reasons. And I'm pleased to say that during the lockdown period, it actually has brought forward more than 60 empty properties and returned those without the support of subcontractors. And that's not just for that period. I think that the trend has been a gradual reduction in the use of subcontractors for major spend. So I really want to celebrate and promote that achievement. In addition to that, we have been looking at the spend of subcontractors and we have identified specialist roles where we see a high level of reliance on those contractors. Obvious examples for me would be around windows and doors, and we've therefore developed a robust training schedule for all staff in the service, which identifies some of those specialist roles and will provide them with investment in training in order to reduce our reliance. In addition to that, we have identified some subcontractors where we are utilising them for large amounts of reactive work. When I talk about reactive work, I'd describe, for example, fencing works, and we saw in January this year a significant amount of work as a result of a storm at that point. As such, we're now developing capital programs where a significant amount of that activity can be let through a tendered contract. And then in the latter half of last year and the beginning of this year, we have been reviewing all of our contracts and identifying savings where appropriate. Some of those conversations still go on with some of the most sizable contracts, such as our whole house servicing contract, but we have also positively taken steps to reduce our overall material spend as a result of conversations with our material supplier. So I hope that provides some reassurance to members of some of the action that is being taken to reduce the level of variances in building services. And I will be attending a cabinet briefing on Monday next week to provide the cabinet with further detail as to the effects of improvement plans in building services, the level of achievement over the last 12 months and our plans going forward with respect to investment and delivering even greater indicators and achievements.
Thank you very much for that very fulsome answer.
Yes, thank you.
You can't possibly follow that, Councillor Field.
I could try. I hope next year's budget's realistic, but COVID might have something to say about that. Yes, it's just we're managing things that go on for a long time, and building work, one understands, is not simple, but people have been doing it for hundreds of years, and we really need to get a grasp, and it sounds as though Gavin's doing that. So okay, I'll hope that I don't have a leg to stand on by the end of next year.
Thank you. So I'm now going to open up the item for debate. Again, I think we'll go through in alphabetical order just to stir it up. In fact, I'm going to go in reverse order just to keep you all on your toes. So, Councillor Richardson, would you like to say anything?
No major comments from me, just to say big thank you to Gavin and his team for all his hard work, and to hope that it continues to improve over the next few months.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to echo Councillor Richardson's comments and thanks to Gavin and his team. There's a real sense, I think, that things are improving, even though the level of adversity is great, but things are improving, and I share the confidence that others have expressed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fleming.
I agree. No further comments to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flatman.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Well, I'm just going to say that the housing team have been absolutely brilliant throughout this COVID-19. We've had homelessness to deal with. We've had the maintenance team going into all these voids and getting them back into surplus. You know, it's just been incredible. And obviously Gavin heads up the whole Suffolk team as well, which just shows that Mid Suffolk are at the forefront. You know, we're not just standing back and letting county and others organise it. Our team has been at the forefront of trying to get a joined up service in place so that when we do have problems with residents and housing, that it's a joined up approach with the health team and absolutely everybody to give these people the help they need to be housed and get work. Thank you, Gavin, and all the team.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flatman. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Flatman's confidence and enthusiasm is infectious, and I too am very pleased with the way things are going in the housing team. So hats off to Gavin and his crew, and thanks to Julie for steering it from our side of the fence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brewster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I mean, the building services team have had quite a difficult time of it in terms of what's gone wrong and what now hopefully is going very right. And I suspect that some of that problem really came from trying to, or from, in fact, joining the two district council teams. And these sort of joined up things can bring their own difficulties, and it takes time to work through. I really do admire Gavin for the work he's done, because he hasn't had an easy time over that period. And I think we will be going into a period where things become easier as we move forward. So thanks, Gavin, and please thank the team for us for what they're doing as well, because it does take a team to resolve some of these sort of issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Gavin, please take back the entire Cabinet's thanks for everything you're doing on the housing. We have seen a marked improvement over the last year, and thank you very much from all of us to all your team.
Thank you.
I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the roll call vote. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brewster.
Approve.
Thank you.
4.
Councillor Byrne.
4.
Councillor Flatman.
4.
Councillor Fleming.
4.
Councillor Gould.
4.
Councillor Morley.
4.
Councillor Richardson.
4.
Councillor Whitehead.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to item 10, which is MCA/19/65, and this is the adoption of the revised table of fares for Hackney carriages. So I'm going to invite the Cabinet Member for the Environment to introduce this report. Councillor Fleming.
Thank you very much, Chairman and Cabinet members. It is my pleasure to introduce the revised table of fares for Hackney carriages in Mid Suffolk today, and I hope that everyone can concur with the proposal to adopt the revised fares in Appendix E. Before I come to the details of the actual report before you, I'd just like to draw your attention to a couple of minor corrections. Section 5, the report begins at page 50, incidentally, in your report. But if you look at section 5, links to joint strategic plan, this should be replaced by links to corporate plan. And at section 8, risk management, the risk register has been updated since the report came to the Licensing and Regulatory Committee. The relevant operational risks are 2A03 relating to supporting business growth and 2A04 relating to business survival, not 2A01 as stated. So I just wanted to draw your attention to those items. In addition, you will note that you will have received a set of appendices attached to an email this morning, and they are not fundamentally different from the appendices in our report, but they are named clearly and independently of one another, so that it is clear which appendix begins and ends where. So those will be the appendices that I refer to today. In setting tariffs for Hackney carriages, the aim is to achieve a reasonable balance between the taxi operator and the travelling public. The taxi operators have obviously got expenses in purchasing, maintaining and running their vehicles, while ensuring that travel is affordable for the public and is safe and supports a vibrant local economy. Now, turning to the Mid-Suffolk tariff review, fares for Hackney carriages in Mid-Suffolk, as is stated in your report, have not been increased since 2011, which is way overdue. The statutory public notice was issued in the local press on the 5th of March 2020, and a notice was posted at the council offices to the effect that the fares were to be reviewed. Access points within the districts also advertised the proposed variation of Hackney carriage fares as required by the Local Government Act 1976. In response to the consultation, only one response was received from the Hackney carriage trade, which objected to the proposed revision of fares that we had put out for consultation. This response is in your packet as Appendix C. The officer's comments are at Appendix D. There were no responses to the table of fares from the general public at all during the consultation period. Now, this may have been due to the effect of the COVID pandemic, because we were just going into lockdown at the time. So I suppose, in a sense, there may have been more responses had this been at a normal time. However, we did receive informal feedback from taxi operators, particularly in Stowmarket, who wanted to see the fares increased a bit more than that which were proposed, particularly the night fares. The single consultation response was considered by our officers, and a result of this representation, an alternative proposal was put forward for consideration by the Licensing and Regulatory Committee, with the aim of achieving a slightly larger pay increase for the trade. This was welcomed by the committee, who were concerned that there had not been an increase for so many years, and this needed to be addressed. Therefore, the report before you today is recommending the adoption of the revised table of fares, not exactly those that were put out for consultation, which appear in Appendix E of our reports. The Licensing Committee formally made the following recommendations. To consider adopting the revised table of fares modified under Option 2, Appendix E for Hackney carriages within the controlled zone of the Mid-Suffolk District Council, and once adopted, the revised table of fares shall become effective on the 27th of July 2020. So when you first look at Appendix A and Appendix E, you'll notice, at least I thought at first, they were identical. They actually aren't, because the yardage in which the fares differentials kick in differ. in favour of the Hackney carriage operators, even though the actual amounts that you first look at are the same. I would also like to advise you that the Hackney carriage and private hire vehicle policies for Baber and Mid Suffolk are currently under review and will come before the Licensing and Regulatory Committee in October this year. The intention is that the new joint policy will require an annual review of Hackney carriage tariffs to ensure that they remain in line with the Consumer Price Index in the future. Although there will be a joint policy for Baber and Mid Suffolk, the tariff tables are different now and are unlikely to be completely harmonised in the near future due to the nature of the districts and the most common journey types. For example, in Baber, most taxi journeys are short around Sudbury, and the tariff table needs to allow the drivers to take in sufficient income from these short journeys than would be appropriate in the more rural areas of Mid Suffolk. And you will see that we have in Mid Suffolk an optional £5 additional fare, which may be added at the discretion of the driver, and I think almost all cases will be added. And this compensates a taxi carriage driver for the expense of going out to a rural area to pick someone up, because they can only actually charge from A to B, not from A to B to C. Having said that, and I assume everyone has had a good look at the report, I would like to put it back to you with the recommendation to adopt the fare increases in line with Appendix E of our report.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. Do we have a seconder?
Do I have a seconder?
You're muted.
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Yes, Chair and Councillor Fleming, very happy as I sit on licensing board to second that proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. So, do we have any questions from members? Start with Councillor Brewster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As also a member of the licensing committee, I really do have no questions on this.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Byrne?
No, thank you, Madam Chairman. No questions.
Councillor Gould?
No questions from me, thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Richardson?
No questions from me, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Whitehead?
No questions.
Excellent, thank you. I can see that Councillor Wellham's got his hand up. Councillor Wellham?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Fleming made reference to the joint taxi policy, which is about to be drafted, or work will commence on it. In doing that, will consideration be given to the steps which could be taken to incentivise the use of electric vehicles, please?
I think that may come out as a recommendation from the work of the task group, but I think it's probably premature now. But I'll let Cassandra Clements comment on that.
Cassandra,
would you like to comment?
Good afternoon, Cabinet. Thank you very much for the question. I absolutely agree that the policy review that's coming back to Cabinet in October is exactly the right place to take a look at that kind of recommendation. I know there are some councils that are looking at potentially reducing licence fees for electric vehicles, such as South Cambridgeshire. That particular example has a rather large infrastructure to sort it. So I know that their county council has received central government funding to get an exclusive EV charging point for all of their taxis. And they have a very robust policy that is currently out to consultation, talking about all taxis moving to being electric within the next 8 years. So that particular example is possibly one of the extreme examples, but absolutely, I think our licensing committee could look at potentially looking at licence fee charges as part of the policy review this year.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions? So I'll move into open up the item for debate. Councillor Brewster?
I strongly recommend this updated policy, Madam Chair. I think it brings the sort of return that the drivers do need. From my experience of Stowmarket, it can be very, very difficult to find a taxi in the evening. On questioning about this, it was explained to me that, in fact, it is difficult for firms to obtain drivers in the evening simply because the return was not great enough. So I think, you know, this will support that and hopefully provide more taxis running certainly all day and into the evening time.
Thank you, Councillor Brewster. Councillor Byrne.
No, thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no comment.
Thank you. Councillor Flatman.
Just to reiterate, Chair, that yes, this was debated fully on the licensing board, and across party representatives all decided that we should go with this this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. Councillor Gould.
Nothing to add. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Only comment I would make, Chair, is just to say that I am fully supportive of the Licensing Committee's recommendations. I'm very pleased to see that there was cross-party support for that. I think this is a very sensible approach. I think particularly given the fact that I'm sure many Hackney carriage drivers will have had particular difficulties over the last few months. I think this is exactly the right time to be considering this, so I welcome it wholeheartedly.
Thank you very much. Councillor Whitehead.
I do find the Appendix E, particularly the yardage tariff, quite bizarre. I mean, I can calculate now that I can do 2,119 yards, be charged £4.60, and an extra yard beyond that would cost me another 20 pence, all providing that the taxi does that in 12 minutes, 3 seconds. But I say I just find the whole tariff a bit bizarre there from the sort of mileage or yardage point of view. But I guess there must be some logic behind it that I can't see, so I'll support it.
Lovely, thank you very much. So I'm now going to ask the Governance Officer to conduct the roll call vote. Claire, thank you.
Councillor Brewster.
4.
Councillor Byrne.
4.
Councillor Flatman.
4.
Councillor Fleming.
4.
Councillor Gould.
4.
Councillor Morley.
4.
Councillor Richardson.
4.
Councillor Whitehead.
4.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So that's the end of all the items on the agenda, and I'm closing the meeting at 12:41. Thank you everybody for your attendance. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.